Okay, Year 11, welcome to this video. It's about how to revise and approach the AQA Unseen Poetry question. That's a 24-mark question on the AQA English Literature exam. I've got some tips for revision and how to write your answer, and also places to find poems. So first of all, places to find poems. You don't necessarily need to go all the way to the library. There are a lot of poems online that you can print off, annotate, and practice with. First place I would recommend is called All Poetry Classics. The reason I wouldn't just put in all poetry is, can you see it says right here, is a community, and for all you know, some of those poems are of a professional standard. Some could be people who aren't particularly good at writing poetry. You need a good poem so that you can get a good answer. All Poetry Classics are published, established, famous poets. Okay, the next one is Poetry Out Loud. This is a competition run for schools where students learn poems off by heart and perform them. And for that competition, there's a whole load of poems on there of 25 lines and fewer. So you can use any of those. And finally, Scottish Poetry Library. I've used the British Poetry Library. I think it's the English Poetry Library, I'm not sure. The Scottish one I find easier to navigate, and the poems are quite interesting. You just go to the tab Poetry, Read and Explore, and then you can either browse by topic and tag, or by poets, or by the best, the favourite, whatever you want. And you can find lots of modern poems there. We're going to use one today called Bad Moon. I'm going to put a link down in the description box. It would be a good idea to print that off, or split the screen and have it somewhere to look at it and pause and go back and forth, because obviously you won't be able to look at the poem in every slide if I'm talking about it and showing you other stuff. Okay, so before you focus on the poem, when you get your exam paper, there's two things you have to get in the right frame of mind with. The first one is you are looking for the poet's agenda. That means, what do they want you to think about and feel? Why did they write it? Yeah, what's their viewpoint? Or what's their emotion? For a poem that we've all read, for example, checking out my history, the poet's agenda is that a lot of education is inherently racist, and you could take it a step further and say inherently supportive of the elite at the expense of everyday people. And he represents that with sarcasm and examples of the useless things he learned and the neglected true history of the Caribbean. So yeah, what is their agenda? What do they want you to think and feel? The second thing, which is vitally important, is what's the question on the exam paper? You only get marks for talking about the topic on the exam paper. Don't write everything about the poem. The chief examiner, I went to Poetry Live, and he said it. He just said it straight out. He showed an example where somebody wrote a really good answer, but one of their paragraphs got ignored because it wasn't about the question. So look at the keywords in the question. So we get a poem about a moon. The question would probably be, how does the poet, I've left a word out there, sorry, how does the poet present the poet's ideas and feelings about the moon? So how does the poet present the poet's ideas and feelings about the moon? There'll always be this ideas and feelings and how. Okay, so here is the poem. Let's read it through. Bad Moon by ASKEW. The moon must be sick of being in poems, always gripped by fingers of late honeysuckle, always filtered in the lake through the jetty's slats, always silvering the flickering tails of the koi, always a dinner plate or a mirror, always a fingernail clipping, a grin. The moon must be sick of being in poems, always the bright pin in the picture's corner, always looking in at the windows of middle-class homes, always shoved above a bridge in Paris or Venice, always an eyeball or symbol, always a radiant woman, a bowl. It's also in the splintered windscreens of the crime scene, with its blots of blood. It's hung over the pig farm, streaking white across the silo's cheek and slanting through the lorry walls in blades. It's in every dented can at the landfill pit, turning the tip to a shoal of dirty fish. Never the buried skull, never the gummed plug in the junkie's sink, never the white cat under the truck's wheel, never the beached and stinking jellyfish, never the gallstone or the pulled tooth, of course. Nobody wants to read poems about this. Okay, so poet's agenda, straight away you've got a contrast here. I put a kind of two columns to help you. But here's what you usually see the moon like, these images of things that look like the moon but are also kind of romantic. So dinner plate, you know, romantic dinner. The moon also looks like a dinner plate. Silver, the moon's silver, flickering tails of koi. They're very, very expensive, fancy fish people have in their ornamental gardens. So it's all like romantic. You know, honeysuckle, that's a flower that smells nice at night. You've got a bright pin in the picture's corner, peeking at the window. It's quite cute. The moon doesn't want to be in poems. The moon doesn't want to be in poems and paintings. And it says always an eyeball or a symbol. So it's always a way of looking at things. And down here you've got images of things that also look like the moon and are also happening at night, but they're not so nice. The buried skull, so a big white bleached skull. The white cat under the truck's wheels. So horribly, if a creature is roadkill, they're kind of flat, and in this case it's a white creature that has been killed and it's flat and it's roadkill. It's a really kind of upsetting image. Pulled tooth, little round white thing associated with pain and the dentist. No one likes that. And that's what it says, no one likes it. It's like bad moon. The moon wants its bad side to be expressed. So this is how you might go about formalizing. When you've got that first impression, what are you going to do to get it written down? First of all, look at the structure. Ask yourself again, what is the poet's agenda? Look for structure and only one or two bits of structure that back up that agenda and the question. The question in this case I've asked you is, how is the moon represented? And you need to explain how the use of this technique helps the poet to present his or her message, and what would the poet like the reader to think and feel and understand. Two things that pop up there is structure. There's a contrast between the first two stanzas, where the moon is good, and the second two stanzas where the moon is bad. If we go back, you've got here, look how ordered they are. The lines tend to be quite orderly. You've got repetition of always, 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 the moon, the moon. It's very, very well organized, isn't it? That's how we like it. That's our good moon. Our good moon is doing what? It's being good. It's fitting in with our poems. And the moon doesn't want to fit in with our poems anymore. So at the start we look at how when it fits in with our poems, we can use it for the images we want, the romantic ones, and you can see that the structure is very organized. The moon, always, 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 always. They're very orderly. But then bad moon doesn't want to fit in with our poems. It doesn't want to do what we want. So the poet makes the moon rebellious by messing up the structure. Look, you've got it's. It's very bad grammar starting something with it's. It's deliberately not fitting in. These two, they're not the same length anymore. They're all disorganized. You know, you've got never, 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 nobody. They're very negative. So the last two, they're not symmetrical, they're not well balanced, they're disorganized, and there's a huge amount of repetition in one, which makes it sound really angry. And here it's very disorganized, and it's deliberately using slangy grammar like it's. So that's what. Hang on for the bell. That's what I would. That's what I would notice, and then I would only be talking about the bits about the moon, not about crime, not about romance. The moon. The moon is being rebellious. The moon is being represented as not wanting to be in nice, neat poems. So when it's bad moon, it messes up the poem. Okay, so imagery. What is the poet's agenda? Find imagery used by the poet which supports his agenda and the topic of the question. So it's exactly the same process. You don't want to find every image in the poem. You're writing a 24-mark question. Have a look through and find maybe a couple of really strong images that really help us think and feel and understand about the moon. And then from those images, use your tentacles, yeah? The squid method, where you're exploding the quote and you're getting as many different meanings and connotations as you can. So if we go back to the poem, I'm not going to flick back to it, but looking on your copy of the poem, or you can pause and go back. there are lots of images in there that look like the moon and happen at night. Maybe you could get a couple of nice, sweet, romantic examples and a couple of particularly gruesome examples and compare them. I mean, that skull image is fairly powerful. The idea about a cat that has been killed at night by a careless driver, they're quite gruesome. The pulled tooth with the connotation of pain and the dentist. Yeah, those kind of images, contrasting them with the safe, nice images of the silver tail of the fish and things like that. Language. Once again, remind yourself, what is the poet's agenda? What do they want us to think and feel? And now you're not looking necessarily for visual images or similes or metaphors. You're looking for all the other language methods. A really good one to look for is semantic fields. They're groups of words on one topic. So if you've got a group of words that are all violent, or a group of words that all happen at night, or a group of words that are all romantic, you can talk about semantic field. Look at the techniques and how they're presenting the message. In our poem, the semantic field changes quite suddenly, doesn't it? And always talk about why. What are they trying to make us think about? Well, they're trying to make us think about a moon that we are used to thinking of as romantic and good, and actually it's got this evil, bad moon side. And no one wants to write about it, but it's there. And you get the sense that the moon always wants to rebel and become part of that. So we've got a semantic field of the romantic, you've got the natural night and the idea of white as pure, versus the semantic field of crime and violence, which also happens at night under the moon. And what's quite nice, you know, they talk about the reflected moon, there are reflections. They talk about expensive fish, koi, and then they talk about how the rubbish at the rubbish tip looks like fish. Well, that's a metaphor. Yeah, that's a method. You've got the idea of the slats of a bridge glittering in the moon's shadow with the slats of like pig vans where they're taken to be killed and slaughtered. So you've got a kind of a direct contrast. It is drawing us. I would say methods here would be contrast, juxtaposition, semantic fields. Go back and have a look for some. You don't need every single one. You just need 2 or 3 that really show how the moon is changing in this poem. And you've got some repetition. Always, always, always is very soothing and calm. Never, 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 never in that last bit. It's very angry and disorientating. And are they saying it never happens? Or are they saying it's never looked at and maybe we should write poems and look at it? Yeah, what does that last line mean? Okay, a few tips when you're writing it up. Use formal writing. You need to use lots of causal connectives, therefore, because, as a result, because that shows that you are thinking of links. Think link. You're linking your quote to your idea. You're linking your language method to your idea. Always try to link the ideas. Use the passive tense and use nominalization instead of a chatty tone. So an example of this is the emphasis is placed on criminality and violence. That sounds better than, I think she emphasizes crimes, Straight away you sound more sophisticated, yeah? And remember, you do get marked on the sophistication of your writing. The emphasis is placed on criminality and violence. What I've done is, I've taken this verb, emphasizes, and I've put it at the start as a noun. Emphasizes. How you do that is, you put a the in front of it, and you cut out the ises. The emphasis. Emphasizes to the emphasis is placed on criminality and violence. Sounds more formal. Final thing, make sure your quotes are short and well chosen. A small selection of well chosen quotes is much better than just putting loads of long quotes in. And finally, yes, use the correct terms, but you must go for the agenda first. Yeah? So don't go and find all the methods and realize you haven't talked about how the moon is sick of being portrayed as romantic and wants to be like a bad moon. Go instead for the moon wants to be seen as a bad moon. What methods, semantic field, images, structure, contrast, help it do that? So always go for the question and the writer's agenda, then the methods. Okay, Year 11, don't forget to subscribe, like, and check out the channel for more videos to come. Good luck with your revising.